Sahanao bhunaktu sahaviryam karavavahai tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So this portion of the Bhagavad Gita, verses 25 to 30 of chapter 4, is called the 12 Yajñas, the 12 sacrifices. So, as I had mentioned last week, there are certain portions in the Gita which are very subtle, deep, and this is one of them. Chapter 4, this portion, then chapter 13, Kshetra Kshetrajna, the distinction between the field, knower of the field, and chapter 15, Purushottama Yoga, the Supreme Being, when he talks of. So, the philosophy, of course, is subtle throughout, but certain portions go much more deeper. And one has to understand, stretch one's intellect, and be patient to understand this. So often I hear, this philosophy is so difficult, it's so deep. This path is so difficult. It is so in the beginning, like anything which is beneficial for you. Person who's never exercised, exercise is very difficult in the beginning. Then it becomes a pleasure. It gives you a permanent benefit. Eating the right type of food. It's difficult in the beginning if you're not used to it. Same thing with Vedanta. So, if you are a true seeker, you are determined to put in the effort, go through that discomfort. And once you cross that initial phase, the same thing becomes so much of a pleasure. You look forward to getting up in the morning. Like getting up in the morning is difficult in the beginning. Once you get used to it, you won't give that up for anything. Trust me. So people don't have the patience. So recently one person, they understand very superficially Vedanta intellect. So superficial. They have zero intellect. And they don't want to put in the effort. So much easier just to go do a ritual and be done with it. Who's going to break your head? But if you don't do this, you will not grow. You have to put in the hard work. Because it is knowledge of the higher that can alone liberate you from the lower. This is the law. So you have to understand this knowledge. That's the only way to get rid of the lower desires. Not keeping quiet, not closing your eyes, not standing on your head. Nothing will happen. It's knowledge of the self. In fact, later in this chapter, he will say that just as blazing fire burns fuel to ashes, yathai dhamsi samiddhogni. This fire of knowledge burns all your desires to ashes. So what is the problem for a spiritual aspirant? Even if you understand and make an effort to gain the knowledge, is that, what is it? Can anybody tell me? Even if you're making a dedicated effort to understand the knowledge, genuinely, what is ultimately the problem?
involvement in the world.
Involvement in the world. Yes, of course.
You see instant results with the worldly achievements, but with
Instant results in the world. Yes, with this it takes time. Correct. Both of you are correct. In this context, what we've been discussing, what is the problem?
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice. Ego, attachment, all correct. What is the problem? Genuinely, if a person is genuinely trying to understand, doing what they should be doing. Yes, Umesh, you have something?
Yeah, knowledge has to be turned into action. That's where the crux lies.
Knowledge has to be turned into action. What is the problem? Why aren't you able to do that? Attractions of the world, vasanas, correct. Selfishness, all correct. But all incorrect.
Because we still don't see the
futility of the world. Yes.
We don't see that.
Meenal.
Because we feel that it's right around the corner, the next thing will give us.
Right around the corner. Yes, that is the attraction. Like she said, each one of us believes that happiness is just round the corner in the world. You're so fixated on that, you're not able to see beyond it. See, in the context I told you, what are these 12 yajñas trying to do? What did I tell you? Okay, I'm giving you a clue. What did I say last time? What are these 12 yajñas trying to do? Sanjay?
They're trying to make sure that every portion of our action is dedicated to the higher.
Correct. So what is the problem?
That our actions are, we're distracted in the day-to-day activity.
There is no constancy of thought. That is the problem. See, spiritual growth, you remember Swamiji has a famous saying, spiritual prayer is not a part-time pastime. It's a full-time awareness of truth. It's there in one of the main quotes in the Vedanta treatise, right? Prayer or worship is not a part-time pastime. Remember that. At least it rhymes, so you can remember. That's why throughout the Gita, the main theme is Nitya Yukta, Nitya Yoginaha, Ananya, Ananya Cheta, no other thought, constancy, all the time he says that, throughout. So our problem is, even if we put some effort genuinely towards the spiritual path, it is negated by our thoughts in the world. So there's no constancy. See, it's like you're exercising for physical fitness and then you come home and eat vada, samosa, fries, coke. You're negating the whole thing. So your point is, I'm putting in so much exercise. I'm doing so much and the weighing scale keeps going up only, never goes down. No. There's no constancy. That exercise has to be protected by all your other activities. So, in fact, somebody was telling me, even if you exercise a lot and whole day you're sitting, that negates it. Even when you're sitting in your office, you have to keep moving around. It's amazing how the body is made. You have to constantly move to keep it fit. So it's like that. So what this portion is trying to do is, So people those days used to do the yajna ritual religiously at various points in time, right? The festivals and rituals. But what he's saying here, in the language of those days, is Arjuna, every aspect of your life should be yajna. In other words, every aspect of your life should be worship. That's the challenge. So I'm working in a job, I can't leave the job. But how do I make that job into a yajna, into worship? That's what you must work on. So what is the concept I told you behind yajna? Why it is the essence of spirituality is sacrifice. So the fire represents Brahman, the divinity, the reality. And the tradition is to offer some grain into the fire. Grain is food representing the body, symbolic of your egocentric desires. So the beauty of the ritual is it not only reminds you of the divinity, which every ritual is supposed to do. The fire represents the self, but the offering is the offering of the ego, the selfishness, and the kindling is the growth of your spirituality, your closeness with the self. Means the more the fire is kindled, it shows you grow more. You're closer to divinity, the self. So it's inversely proportional. The more you sacrifice your egocentric desires, the more your divinity is augmented. The more spiritual you become, the more you grow. That augmentation is that comes through sacrifice. Otherwise, the fire is burning regularly. What's the yajna ritual? Is the offering and the kindling. That's the fundamental principle. You have to give up your egocentric desire. To that extent, you grow. So that's why it's a very powerful ritual, and that was all they needed those days. In the Vedic times, this was the only ritual. So Agni was the fire, and Agni took you to Brahman, the self, the divinity, the sacrifice. So you just got to remember this concept, because he puts it in such a roundabout way, which we will dissect. But you must understand the basic concept, then it becomes easy. This was the difficult part. I told you, it took my guru, because nobody taught him. He taught me, so I'm teaching you, it's easy. But to derive it yourself, those days when there was no guidance, that is the beauty. So make sure you have the book, his commentary. I told you last week, because I don't find it anywhere else. I've gone through the whole lot. So life consists of three main transactions, right? I told you last time, receipt of stimuli through your organs of perceptions. This is called jnana indriyas in Sanskrit, through which you gain knowledge from the world. The organs of perception, eyes, ears, taste, smell, touch. Then there is a reaction in your antakarana, your inner organs, which is your mind and intellect, feeling and thinking. Right? You smell, a smell comes. There's a reaction in your mind. I like it or I don't like it. And your intellect says, doesn't matter, you don't like it. You don't like the smell of medicine, you have to drink it. Right? Intellect says, doesn't matter. If you go by your mind, then you're a child. Child says, I don't want the medicine. It's too bitter. So mind, intellect. And then there is the response. Receipt, reaction, response through your organs of action. You go there, you drink the medicine. right? So the challenge is every aspect of your life, receipt, reaction, response, should be converted into an awareness of the self. So in 25, some yogis perform sacrifice to the gods. Others perform sacrifice by offering sacrifice itself in the fire of Brahman. So these are the first two yajñas. The first yajña, sacrifice to gods, means gods represent various powers and functions in the world. So I told you the master plan of the sages those days, instead of asking us to think of God, they know is impractical. Wherever our mind goes, they planted a God. So you are reminded of your purpose, even if you're pursuing the world. So if you're pursuing wealth, Lakshmi, you're reminded that wealth should be pursued for a higher purpose. That's all it is. You're pursuing success, Ganesha, should be pursued for a higher purpose. The farmer thinks of rain, is Indra. He should do his farming to help the community. That's all it means. So a God is planted. That was the beauty. That's why India was known as a spiritual country from olden times, because they had made a conscious effort to divinize everything. Every animal, every bird, even the elements, wind, air, fire, water, pursuits, everything was divinized. So people think, what is this? Oh, so many gods. No, there's only one reality. But since our mind goes so many places in the world, these are the gods. So that's why it's in plural. Offering, perform sacrifice to the gods. So some yogis means the beginning stages of your spiritual path. You can't think of the self. So you must sacrifice to a higher purpose in the world. And I've told you that often. That is karma yoga. That's all he's talking about. In your work, work for your patients, work for your company, not for yourself. Work for the community, for your country, however high you can go. And now is the difficult part. This is easy. Others perform sacrifice by offering sacrifice itself in the fire of Brahman. So this refers to the absolute goal of enlightenment. First yajna refers to relative goals, right? Second yajna, others, means those few who have grown spiritually, they sacrifice to gain enlightenment. And what do they sacrifice? He says they sacrifice. Now what does this mean?
Sacrificing the individuality.
Sacrificing individual. How are you deriving that? It is easy to say, of course. You have to sacrifice the ego to get to Brahman. But what does he mean by saying sacrifice itself? Yes, Umesh.
Sacrifice means all actions, all efforts.
All actions, all efforts. Yes. Deepika.
Sacrifice all desires.
All desires. That even you're doing in the first yajna. You are sacrificing your personal desires for the self. The point here is he's saying you must sacrifice. Sacrifice. That's the exact words. Some others perform sacrifice. Yajnena eva upajuvati. Yajna means sacrifice eva. Even sacrifice they have to give up. Jayu.
There is. Can you hear me, Sir Gautam ji? Yeah.
Yes.
There is more to give. They have given up everything. They sacrificed everything. So therefore, there is nothing more to sacrifice. And therefore, it is sacrifice itself.
Nothing more to sacrifice. But they are giving up sacrifice.
Right. So there is nothing more. And so
Nothing
therefore,
more.
sacrifice itself.
Okay. Yes, Saurabh.
So sacrifice the desire for self-realization.
Sacrifice the desire to reach the self. Okay. Warm. Warm, cold, hot. Meenal.
Sacrificing the ultimate ego, like sacrificing yourself. No thought.
No thought. Ego. Correct. That's what Saurabh is saying. Correct. You're not wrong. Ashok and Chandrala, after that we'll... Ashok.
Yeah, so it is letting go even the idea of that I'm sacrificing something.
Letting go of the idea that I am sacrificing something. Okay. Yes. Chandrala.
Sacrificing the need to sacrifice, that you are doing it.
Sacrificing the need to sacrifice. Okay. Ravi.
I think they sacrificed our identity, which is very in ignorance.
Sacrifice our identity, which is currently in ignorance. You're all right. Correct. Shalini.
Sacrificing the ego and the little self in you.
Little self. The ego is the little self. So, see, what happens is you are sacrificing your ego and egocentric desires as you start, right? That's what the yogis do, which we all have to do. How are you able to sacrifice your ego and egocentric desires? Because there is a desire for enlightenment. That higher desire is how you're able to sacrifice the lower, right? The more you understand how important it is to reach the self, the more you're able to sacrifice. This is knowledge. You all know that, at least theoretically. So, at the end, what is remaining? The desire to reach the self. This is the highest state in the world, right? You have given up all desires except you are now left with the last desire. Means the last thought is God. You want to reach God realization, self-realization. So what do you have to do?
Sacrifice.
You have to give up that thought. That is what I explained. You remember in the Vedanta class, that is, Om itself is given up. Om is the last state of meditation. You're chanting Om. And in the end, you have to stop the Om and delve into silence. You have to give up even Om. That's the whole concept of meditation. That's why I said, don't even try. We don't know what you're doing. First, you have to work to reach that state. Because enlightenment means thoughtlessness. This is still a thought. Even the thought of the self is still a thought. It's a desire. So only when that thought is given up, right, then you reach the self. In other words, like somebody said, there is nothing left to sacrifice because you've given up the last thought. So that's what he's saying. To reach the self, you must come to a state where there's nothing left to sacrifice. You've given up sacrifice. Can you believe how they put it? So what we need to do is, you start where you are. What are you holding on to? What are you attached to? Give that up. Then you grow higher. Give that up. Then you grow higher. Give that up. So in the Puranas, they put all this in the form of stories because the layperson finds it impossible. So there's a great king, Ranti Deva. That's one of the stories. And he gave up everything. Because in those days, people used to write about you to the extent you gave up. Nowadays, they write about you to the extent you have. Look at everything is upside down. Who's in the billionaires list? Is that something to write about? You must write about who's given up. So anyway, let's not get into that. So he gave up everything. And the story goes, he had some food to eat. He was eating in the night. And one beggar came, I'm very hungry. Can I eat? He said, of course. He gave half. Half is left. And another beggar came. I'm very hungry. He said, yes, you can have half of mine. Quarter left. Another. That also he gave. Finally, water. He said, let me at least drink some water. And somebody came, I'm very thirsty. So the story is, as soon as he gave the water, he got enlightenment. Now don't mimic this. You're sitting there in your house, yes, please take this, throw the water out. Nothing will happen. What is this? It's all symbolic. See, people read these stories and they, what kind of a life? Who can live like that? Obviously, you can't live if you don't eat. It's all symbolic. Anything you're holding on to, anything you're attached, that is the impediment. So those were the kings those days. We are the people who were worshipped. Those who gave and gave till they gave themselves. Till nothing was left to give. So others perform sacrifice by offering sacrifice itself in the fire of Brahman. So in the book, Swamiji's commentary, there is a diagram of the 12 Yajñas. So you can look into that. So here it is. Those of you who don't have it, just for your reference. So in the middle of this diagram is the first two Yajñas, 1 and 2. Limited ideal, which we just discussed. So either you have to have the limited ideal, sacrifice for the sake of others, or the absolute ideal, which is enlightenment. So one of these two you have to fall into to start the whole process, right? So I can't see anybody wanting enlightenment. So you have to dedicate your life to a higher purpose, not just live for yourself and your family. It's got to go beyond that. If you're not going to do that, there's no point learning this. Seriously. Because you're not meant for this. It's not your fault, it's not anybody's fault. You must have a higher purpose in your life. And then from the next verse onwards, he goes into perception, because perception is how the whole thing starts, right? So he gives that in that diagram there. Stimuli, world, responses. What I told you, receipt, reaction, response. Yeah. Chitra, you had something before we get into verse 26.
Yes, just a quick clarification, Gautamji. The sacrificing the sacrifice, is that the same as moksha?
Moksha is what you get. Moksha means enlightenment, self-realization. So moksha is liberation. That's the translation of moksha. So to get to moksha, you have to sacrifice the ego completely. I've already explained that. So,
but that sacrifice, the sacrifice that was explained like 5 minutes ago, where you sacrifice that very last part of, or sacrifice residual ego or what have you, that leads to moksha, right?
Yes.
after you sacrifice the sacrifice. Okay, thank you.
Gautamji,
Hmm.
I have a clarification on this verse 25. So the limited ideal and the absolute ideal, 1 and 2, they are put in the center, not like in that circle, because they are independent of the stimuli or the reception.
Yeah, whether you have an ID limited or absolute, you have to, whatever activity you're doing has to be dedicated to the self. So it doesn't matter whether it's limited or absolute. Then he comes to what you need to do to attain that ideal. 1 and 2 is setting the ideal. It could be relative or absolute, right? And the others are how to get to that ideal, whether it's relative or absolute. So that is common in both.
But you don't need a receipt of the stimuli for those relative ideal, right?
What do you mean you don't need?
You said
Anybody who's in this world is receiving stimuli all the time. Even if you're sitting and meditating, you're getting stimuli from the world. What are you talking? So whether it's relative or absolute, all has to be done. Receipt, reaction, response has to be dedicated to the self, to the higher. Limited and absolute only differ what ideal you set. Regardless of that, all activities have to be dedicated to that ideal. That's what he's saying. 26.
Shotradirindriyananye samyamadnishu juhvati Shabdadin vishayananye indriyadmishu juhvati.
So now that you've understood the basics, what is the basic? That every activity has to be converted to a yajna, to an offering and a kindling. Because the yajna ritual reminds you of the self, right? So if everything in life you can convert to a yajna, everything becomes the thought of the self. Everything reminds you of your purpose in life. That's the constancy of effort. That's it. So here he says, others offer hearing and other senses as sacrifice into the fires of restraint. So the third yajna is, what is offered is hearing and other senses. And what is kindled is self-control, fires of restraint. So what is the third yajna? What is he saying here? Sound is offered.
Hearing is.
And the hearing, see, what happens is, let's say the sound enters your eardrum. Then it's taken through your auditory nerve into your brain. So the sound is consumed, as it were, into your body. And what is kindled?
Hearing.
Is the hearing. So that's what he's saying here. Any time you hear, smell, taste or touch, you must remember to oblate it to the divinity. So in other words, practically whatever stimuli you're getting should be done only if it takes you to the self. That's the practical meaning. So do not indulge in any sensual activity which takes you away from your goal of enlightenment. So every time you are getting a sense object, is this conducive for the self? That's what you got to tell yourself. So convert it into a spiritual activity. So you find yourself indulging, no, get it back to this. So third yajna, hearing is offered, the sense perception, stimuli is offered and hearing is kindled. Fourth yajna, the sound is offered. What am I doing? The second part of the others offer hearing and other senses as sacrifice into the fires of restraint. This is Yajna 4. Others offer sound into the fires of the senses. This is Yajna 3, which I just explained. So, fourth Yajna is whatever sound is offered, whatever sound is heard, you must offer it to self-control, which I explained to you. That anything you do, you must not let it get into indulgence. See, for example, you want to have junk food for the enjoyment, of course, nothing wrong with it. But when you believe that habit is going to go against your health, it's going to damage you, it's going to be against your goal in life, you got to restrain yourself. Self-control. That's what he says. So any sense perception should be offered to self-control. You understand? See how beautifully he puts it. You get in a sense stimuli, what is kindled? The hearing. It doesn't stop there. But that hearing should be conducive for your spiritual growth. That is the fourth hearing. Yeah, Roxanne?
How does restraint here compare to choosing instead the higher? Because in the past, I recall you say, you can't really control things as much as you choose something better.
So what's the first part? What was your question?
You mentioned the word restraint, and in the past, I remember you saying you don't really control yourself as much as choose the higher.
That is self-control.
So how do those two contrast in this moment?
That is self-control. See, you cannot control the outside world. That is what I have meant. But you control your reaction to it, right?
Okay.
See, you can't control that there's a bar open on the street and people are drinking. You have no jurisdiction over that. But you can control whether you go there and indulge. That is your decision. So same thing with the sense objects. You can't say the world is full of sense objects. What do you want me to do? What to do? I went to Manhattan. I went to 5th Street. I bankrupted myself. Now what to do? I bought everything I saw. You can't say that. I mean, what is there. But what you buy, you have to use your intellect, right? What you can afford. So that's what is meant. You can only control yourself. So here what he's saying is, the minute the sense perceptions go against your goal in life, you have to control it. You have to offer them. You have to sacrifice them. So you've eaten 2 samosas. Samosas means, Roxanne, you know samosas? They're fried, dumplings? They can't call it dumplings.
Yes, I know. That's
fritters, I don't know what you guys would call them in English. So it's a puff pastry. Puff pastry with a savory filling, not a sweet. So you've eaten 2, and now you understand that, but your tongue is craving for the 3rd. But you know you are overweight, is damaging your health. So this is self-control. So the smell is coming in, right? All the time there, in the house. And you have to say no. This is what the 4th yajna is. You sacrifice the hearing into the fire of restraint. So like I said, once you understand the concept, it becomes very simple. So even the stimuli come in, you're reminded of the self. The sound is coming, I'm registering the sound. This is a yajna. Now make sure that sound is conducive for my spiritual growth. That's the fourth yajna. You okay, Roxanne?
It just, the one thing that I'm not sure of again is restraint as control versus choosing not to do it because you know better. But see what I mean? You know, because you say you can't let go the lower as much as reach for the higher. And then you don't prefer the lower anymore. See what I'm saying now?
Yeah, but that is only when you're established in the higher. See, just because you understand right now that the self is the highest, does it mean you have no desires for the world? Of course you do. It's not just understanding that the higher. So, to get established in the higher, your mind will still go towards the lower. You have to control it and bring it back to the higher. That is the whole spiritual path.
Okay.
But because you understand why you're doing it, you're able to control. That is true self-control. If you don't understand the higher, then it's frustration. If you don't understand why you're controlling, that is what happens in religion. Don't do this, don't do that. That is bad. This is bad for you. But why? Nobody explains that.
Okay.
So Vedanta explains this is the higher. To get there, you have to control the lower. So you're happy to do it because you understand why you're doing it. Got it?
Okay.
Meena?
Hariom Gautamji, you explained the indulgence part of it and said that capacity to say no. You have the knowledge, you know that whatever you, like say, you gave the example of samosa, you know that that's not good to go for the third one. And yet you go for the third one, having the knowledge. What is that then? What is that just being tamasic or is it just being...
No, you're assuming having the knowledge means you will be able to control. Who said that? Knowledge is just information. Right? If that knowledge is not become wisdom, it's not become a part of you, you will still succumb to the lower. That's exactly what I was just saying. So you have to put in the effort in self-control till you become established in the knowledge.
So you're lacking, so that self-control is not there. Okay.
Self-control is not there because the intellect is not strong enough with the knowledge yet.
Yeah.
When the intellect becomes strong enough with the knowledge, it's called wisdom. You're living it.
Then you will not do it. Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Even there are two stages. One is the intellect is strong enough to control, but that desire is still there. So there is still an aspect of control, but you're able to do it.
Okay.
Others are not able to do it. The intellect is not even strong for that. Second aspect is you have grown to such a degree that the desire itself is gone.
Yeah.
So where's the control if there's no desire?
Correct. That I get. Yeah, that I get. Yeah.
So
okay.
At least we should strive for stage one.
Yeah.
That we are able to control the desire. Even that we're not able to. Yeah. So you want to eat 2 and you end up 6. So you want to eat 6 and you eat 2. That is control. But you still want 6.
Yeah.
So the highest stages you don't want. Doesn't mean anything.
Got it. Thank you, Gautamji.
Get it? Yes.
So I'm trying to understand the sound and the hearing. Can I think about the sound as the environment and the hearing as indulging in the environment? One is like staying away, the sound, and the hearing is I'm in that environment.
No, don't understand all. You understand what is said here first. What he's saying here is when the sound is given up, hearing is kindled. In other words, just because the sound is all out there doesn't mean you're hearing it, right?
Yeah.
It has to come into you. It has to be taken into your brain. That sense center has to be what is it called? Stimulated, then you hear it. That's what he's saying. So the sound is given up and then you hear. Hearing is kindled. So he says that whole process, think of it as a yajna. So what it means is, practically, is you must choose those sounds that are conducive for your spiritual development. It actually means that. So what is the first prayer in the Upanishads? Bhadram karne bhi shrunuyam deva bhadram pashye makshabhir yajatra. Bhadram karne, karna means the ears. Bhadram, auspicious. May our ears hear only that which is auspicious. Bhadram pashye makshabhir yajatra. May our eyes see only that which is auspicious. So that's the implication. Now why are you deviating, right? So if sound has to be converted to a yajna, what does it mean? The sound should be conducive for your spiritual growth. So you must hear, sound means music. What you hear, it should be spiritual, conducive. Prayers, chants, music, these are the sounds conducive for your spiritual growth. And then there is sensual music, gross music, that will bring out those tendencies, right? Same thing with your eyes. You watch gross, sensual material, those desires will come. You watch spiritual material, those desires won't come. So that's what it means. And secondly, when that sound is kindled in you, it should not be detrimental to your spiritual growth. So this is the 3 and 4. Got it? So you got to go beyond just the label yajna. What does it mean? That's what is more important. Yeah. Umesh, you had a question?
Yeah, Gautamji, the third yajna is perception. In verse 26, where is perception in that?
Where is perception? What is hearing? What is sound? In the fire of the senses, that is perception. I just explained, right?
Okay.
When the sound comes, you perceive the sound. That is perception. Yeah, Chandrala?
Gautamji, you talked about restraint, having only 2 samosa even though you have desire for 6 samosas, and then not having the desire at all. So what is the journey to go from this control to not having the desire? Like, how do you go to that level?
Knowledge. The more you get established in the knowledge, see, the more your thoughts go towards the self, the less your thoughts go to the world. So how a desire is extinguished is by replacing all those thoughts with higher thoughts. That's a process. Because the thoughts in you are accumulated from births. It's not just this birth. So they are so deep-rooted. So the whole spiritual path is to slowly replace them with thoughts of the higher. So first, the thoughts are there, but they must be under control. They don't disturb your day-to-day functioning. That should be the first goal. So even though you want to eat 6, you're happy with 2. There is a desire for 6. But 2 is good enough. You understand? Others don't even have that. They will eat 6 and destroy their health. But a time should come, if it's there or not there, it should not make a difference. That is a high state. Whatever is there is given by that divinity. I'll eat it. Doesn't matter what you're eating. That's a very high state. Whole day is, especially in India, the whole hobby is after breakfast, what's for lunch? After lunch, what's for dinner? Whole life lived like that. Now suddenly it doesn't make a difference what you eat. It's a very high state, no? Chandrala, you can imagine, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, so that is literally a saintly level where the preference itself is not there. But at least first you must have control.
So, sound is offered and hearing is kindled, and perception with perception, that's the self-control. So, you gave the example of listening to sound is like the bhajans, and then you hearing is kindled, you think about Brahman. And perception with perception, so even too much of bhajans is also not good.
See, what he's talking about, when the perception is there, right? There are two aspects. One is make sure that perception is conducive for your growth. Second is after that perception is over, don't linger into that perception. That is also self-control, right? So, you went for dinner last night. It was a nice dinner. You controlled it. Everything was fine. But today you're thinking about last night's dinner. So you have to control yourself from lingering in the past. That is also self-control. Correct? So two aspects. Got it?
But if I give that, extend that example to the bhajan.
Bhajan, what? Same thing. If bhajan you did yesterday, why are you thinking of it today? Today you should be now sitting in the class and listening to what is said now. Not think about an experience which happened before. 6 months back I saw Swamiji. What a great experience. What are you doing now about what he taught you? It's like that. Just lingering in some pleasant perception from the past. Oh, I met such a great soul. And then what did you do about it? Nothing. Right? So, lingering in the past prevents you from doing what ought to be done in the present. So, it is an indulgence. Right? So, I am just giving generally don't indulge. You're giving the type of indulgence. One of the types is lingering in the past. Correct? Yeah, Shweta?
Gautamji, so can we say that the first restraint, the third yajna, is at the receipt level, and the fourth restraint, the fourth yajna, is at the reaction level?
Yes, it is a reaction because you are now doing something with that stimuli, right? You're not letting it. So that is at the intellectual, mental level. Of course. Correct. Yes, Chitra?
Gautamji, on the line of sound and hearing, I think I heard you say filter out the sounds that are not conducive to you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any connection between that and who you hang out with practically? I'm trying to see if that and satsang has any
All
connection.
that is satsang. When you're hanging around people, it is interacting with other people's thoughts, ideas, right?
Correct.
So here he's talking about physical perception. What you're talking about is thoughts and ideas. Principle is the same.
Okay.
So that is a general principle. Here he's talking about a specific aspect. Now don't bring in that part of it. You can extend it to that. But that's not what he's talking about specifically here. He's generally talking about it. That anything that comes inside you should be conducive. So I've independently explained to you all, it's very, very important, the type of people you hang around with, because you're not able to withstand the lower thoughts and ideas. So why do you, it's like scratching a wound, you know? You're constantly indulging in that same frequency. So you get pulled down.
What about people who overindulge and over-obsess with the notion of God? priests.
See, now don't get into absurdities. I've given you the principle, now decide who you want to associate with or not. What about these people? What about those people who believe in that political belief? What about those people who are indulged? You decide who you want to hang out with. You believe it is not conducive for your spiritual growth, do not associate. That is the principle. You decide who. I'm not here to give a listing of who all you should not associate with. So I know this is a difficult concept, but that's why I'm entertaining questions so you understand the basics. The basic concept here is what? Let's end with that. So the Gita and the Upanishads, their style is to put it in a convoluted way so it makes you think. But what's the base? What did we start the lecture with? What is the problem?
Constancy of
There is no constancy of thought. There is no consistency of purpose. So in your life, if you want to achieve anything, there has to be a constancy. A businessman who builds a business from scratch, he has to give up his friends and family life to a point. Right? A sportsman wants to be number one. So similarly, friends, you want to be spiritual. There has to be a constancy. So the 12 yajñas are only trying to say, every aspect of your life you have to look into. It should be conducive for your spiritual growth. Who you associate with, what you watch, what you hear, what you eat, what time of day you wake up, how are you approaching your work, are you working, so all that he'll get into. But this is the concept. So you all should be doing that introverted activity all the time. Is this helping me get to the self? I will do it. If not, I'm going to discard it. I don't care what anybody thinks or does. That should be your determination. If you want to really grow. Otherwise, you compromise and compromise. What to do? My daughter called me. What to do? My uncle, my brother. There's no end to that. No achiever says that. They decide what course their life has to take. So think about it and we will continue. It's not easy, but we have to work our way through these concepts. So those of you who don't have the commentary, again, this is a reminder. Definitely get it, because along with the lectures, that becomes your reference reading. So on Thursday is Guru Purnima, as you all know. So you got the email. Just have to log on to our website to watch the 3 yogas to meditation. It's an archived lecture by Swamiji from about, I think, 40 years ago, literally. So it should be very interesting. So it's at 9:30 a.m. in the morning. I know it's a work day, but if you cannot attend that evening, you can catch up on the same homepage. The recording will be available. So it's not a problem. Just log on to our website and forward it to anybody else you think would be interested. Wednesday, there is no Q&A because I have another speaking engagement, but any questions we'll take at the next following Q&A. So we'll see you on Thursday, of course, online, but Saturday for the class. Hari Om.